Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the James Skrmetta Show podcast, presented to you by Matt Card Anderson Associates, PLLC. Thank you very much for listening. That opening you heard was not the normal chords of Cult of Personality that we usually come into. That was, of course, Eruption from Eddie Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen passed away from a battle with cancer yesterday. From when we were recording this, we were recording on a Wednesday. Is today Wednesday? It is Wednesday. Today is the vice presidential debate tonight. But yesterday, Eddie Van Halen passed away. So in his honor, he will lead us into the show, and we will return to Cult of Personality in future episodes. Eddie Van Halen, I loved Van Halen. You know, I think every kid goes through a period where they like trendy music. They kind of like the pop music. They kind of like whatever's hip, whatever's on the radio, whatever people think is cool, whatever people think is popular. In my time, not to date myself too much, but in my time, that was the NSYNCs of the world, the Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, anything on TRL. That's the generation I grew up in. You know, that's the generation of music that I would listen to. My parents listened to a very different kind of music. I think the very first song I knew all the words to was "Born to Be Wild." So my parents listened to music like Van Halen. And I think around probably that 15, 16, 17-year-old world, people start to develop their own musical taste. You know, in my case, in high school, you started hearing a lot of people who were Dave Matthews fans or like Widespread Panic, stuff like that. Some people went more down the rock avenue with Van Halen or Black Sabbath or Metallica or whatever. And you kind of start feeling yourself out of what you like, you know. And for me, Van Halen was one of them. You know, I remember kind of going into that classic rock universe there, and Van Halen was a big part of that. My high school baseball team, we ran out to Van Halen. So his songs, you know, Van Halen was a guy that I listened to a lot, still do listen to a lot. I worked at the Hard Rock Casino, and when I worked there, I remember every time Van Halen would come on, you know, it would be a good moment there. Out of the thousands and thousands of songs, it always felt good when Van Halen riffs. So sad to see him go. It is crazy, mortality, death, stuff like that, especially with legends. It is such a weird feeling for people just to go and to be gone. But I'm sure his works will be around forever. How are we doing? How the hell are we doing out there, ladies and gentlemen? This episode will be an interesting one. Interesting for the listeners, I'm sure, because this is a full-on podcast. We are putting out so much content. I think people, you know, it's kind of like they're expecting either the little clips or a podcast or the football show or who the hell knows anymore. We're putting out a ridiculous amount of content. I would say, I obviously have no way of like tracking this, but I would say that we're putting out more content than anybody on earth right now. I don't think there is another human being who is putting out the amount of content that we are putting out. We're pretty much like the only person that I would say is even comparable, or some people would say comparable, is like the entirety of Barstool Sports. That's about it. When you're looking at what we're doing, you're talking about somewhere around 4 hours of podcast a week. You're talking about somewhere between 15 to 20 YouTube videos a week. And you're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 40 hours of live streaming a week. And that's every single week over a multitude of channels. So we got it going on, man. Down where I'm at, down in my neck of the woods, down in the heart of Dixie, down here in the Bayou. We're currently, we're in the path of another hurricane. This is like the, fifth hurricane we've had in a month. And it's also this car festival called Cruising the Coast. And it's where a bunch of old cars gather and everyone shows off their hot rods. Normally, I would say, man, like, can you get more embarrassing? You know, normally I would say find a different hobby. But man, in today's day and age, and right now, dude, get it where you live. Whatever you enjoy, and I've preached this on the podcast for literally years, definitely since we started doing this consistently. I think one of the best things to do in life is to figure out like what you like to do and then just do it. Whatever you like. You know, if you like Dragon Ball Z, instead of, I think I mentioned this on the podcast a couple weeks ago. When I was in junior high school, my favorite thing was to go home, watch Dragon Ball Z, and play with my action figures when I was like 12, 13 years old. Everyone else was rushing home to get on the phone and call a girl or call a guy or IM chat. I wasn't doing that stuff. And, it's embarrassing at the time. You don't want people to know that. And then as you grow older, dude, whatever your hobbies are, have hobbies, especially right now. Right now, especially for me, my disillusion is at the absolute highest place it can be. And we'll get into that more in the podcast. But it's tough, man. It's tough to find a silver lining. It's tough to find any of that. I mean, I wish I had Jennifer Lawrence's phone number because I could use a playbook right now. I need to find some silver linings. And if you don't get that reference, it's okay. I barely got it myself, and I said it. So, but right now, things are so shitty. I'm not going to lie to you. Unironically, I Googled how to move to New Zealand like 2 days ago. I mean, I am checked the fuck out. It is so hard for me to maintain any semblance of like connection with what's going on because everywhere you turn, it's so damn bad. Now, I won't get into that right now. We got a lot to talk about. But again, seeing all the people around their hot rods and their 1965 Stingrays and whatever, and looking at the cars, normally I would say, dude, come on, man. Come on, just do something else. But I noticed myself today going, hey, at least you got something. Bury yourself into something. I've been reading a lot. I've been doing a lot of yoga. I've been running a lot, all those things, just trying to take my mind off of reality. And that's not a great thing to do when you host a podcast. That's not a great thing to do whenever people are expecting, reaction videos or a podcast or whatever. And, it's hard. It really is hard to stay connected to that kind of stuff because then you feel the full wrath of what our society is right now. So I've been reading, the unofficial James Skrmetta book club. I would love to have a book club. I would love to do a book club. If we ever get this thing really off the ground, maybe we will do that. But I've read a few books since we talked about the last books I was reading. I finished a book from a friend of mine, David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. It was incredible. If you're looking for some motivation, I put it on my Instagram story. Did I? I don't think I did, actually. But if you are looking for some motivation or if you're looking for something, go check that out. Again, David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. I finished Dan Brown's Inferno. I love Dan Brown books, and I think sometimes he gets thrown into that like Nickelback category where some reader tryhards don't think he's like, whatever. Like, yeah, I think they liken him more towards the Twilights of the world than like actual novels. But I thought it was fantastic. If you're interested in kind of a thriller, if you like obviously the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons or The Lost Symbol, then Inferno is really good too. So I enjoyed it a lot. There's a great twist at the end. And I really enjoyed that one. Also read The Alchemist, which I think I talked about on the podcast. Another really good book for if you're just feeling kind of stifled. And I didn't read all these books because I was feeling any of those things, but they just kind of fell into my lap. But yeah, if you haven't read The Alchemist and you're in any kind of a change in your life or a change in your lifestyle or feeling stagnant, please go read that. Really, really, really good book. And now I'm reading Where the Crawdads Sing, which a few years ago was a really popular book. My mother just read it and she loved it, so she passed it on to me and said, read it. So I've been reading that. So that's a little bit of that. Oh, and Gilmore Girls. Shall we do a Gilmore Girls update? Let's do it. If you're out on the road, feeling lonely and so cold. Gilmore Girls is still as good as ever, still as fun as ever. I've slowed down dramatically on the show. Really kind of a forced thing for me because I was falling into that where I would just wake up and watch Netflix for 4 hours. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's 2 p.m. Let me get my day started. And then things would just go dramatically downhill from there. So I have really, really worked to schedule out my watching. So I'm only watching like 2-ish episodes a day, 1 to 2 episodes a day. There are even some days I don't watch any at all, which is if you would have told me that 2 weeks ago, I would have said no possible way. But I just started season 4, so I'm on season 4, episode 3, I think, or 4, one of those two. And Rory has just gone to college. She's just moved in. She's having some trouble, some homesickness, and that's what's going on there. So her and Jess, spoiler alert, her and Jess, I think, are over with, thank God. Was not a fan of Jess. Dean seems to be married to another lady. Big fan of Dean. If you watch Supernatural, Dean is in Supernatural. It's Jared Ledecky or something like that. It's his name. But yeah, he's in Supernatural as well. So yeah, I mean, I've been, like I said, I've just been falling off into stuff. I've just been trying to do other stuff, just keep my mind busy, keep my mind occupied, because I don't want to preach doom and gloom, but sometimes it's just too much. Like sometimes I do think you need to check out, and I've been kind of checked out. I've been, whether I'm in Stars Hollow and Gilmore Girls or reading a book or running or whatever. I was thinking about restarting The Walking Dead the other day. I'm just looking. I'm out there looking, man. I'm out there looking. But how is everyone doing? What have you been up to? How are you handling this thing, man? It's so crazy. It's so crazy how far we are into this. I mean, you're talking about October 7th, and this all started in March. And for a lot of people, there is no normal. You know what I mean? Like it's just the same. It's just kind of the same. My life right now is pretty much what it was in March, somewhere in there. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I honestly, I agree with this. I think it's worse right now because it's so half in, half out. Where before there was regulations, there was rules, everyone was doing the same thing. Now it's like, some people wearing a mask, some aren't wearing a mask, some people are staying home, some aren't staying home, some have COVID, some don't have COVID. It's just this weird middle ground. And then you look all around you and things are just like crumbling everywhere. I mean, like think about WAP, right? Like when we were making fun of WAP, having all the fun with WAP, that was what, like 3 weeks ago, a month ago? I really honestly don't know. It seems like 20 years ago. Like the things that have happened in 2020 are crazy. Today on the show, besides me rambling, we'll talk about the NBA Finals ratings. Why are the ratings so bad? We will talk about movie theaters closing down. And we will, of course, talk about Donald Trump and his COVID reaction. And we'll spend a good amount on the Trump stuff. Before we get to that, ladies and gentlemen, the show is presented to you by MacHard Anderson Associates, PLLC, 601-450-1715. The website, machardlaw.com, MCHARDLAW.com. Look, I'm telling you right now, I just saw a commercial, saw another drive-by billboard, Scuzzo lawyer commercial, and every time I see one of the commercials, all I can think of is thank God that I can tell you about the good folk at machardlaw.com. These guys care about you. Look, that's the truth. That is the truth. You can't find that with other lawyers. Lawyers want your money. Lawyers are like leeches. They're succubuses or succubuses. Succubes? They're like succubuses. A succubus sounds like it should be at a Greyhound station or something. But these guys want what's best for you. Look, car wrecks, 18-wheeler collisions, wrongful death, bad faith insurance claims, fire loss, termite damage, offshore injuries, employment discrimination, and contract business disputes. Whatever your situation, your case is important to them. They are the best. Please, if you have any lawyering needs at all, and people do nowadays, it's a crazy time, especially right now down here. There's hurricanes everywhere. If you have stuff happening and you're backed into a corner, you do not have to fight your way out. You do not have to go at this alone. Do not go at it alone. You need the aggressive representation to meet your needs, and the only people that can deliver that are the good folk at MacHard Anderson and Associates, PLLC. Let them do what they can do. Again, 601-450-1715, machardlaw.com. All right, so let's start off with the NBA rating. So the NBA rating, so it's the NBA Finals right now. The Lakers are one game away from defeating the Miami Heat, and LeBron is about to get another ring. Now, here's the deal, though. The ratings for the games have been, like, dramatically bad. Here are the numbers for the first three games. Game 1, 7.4 million views. Game 2, 6.1 million views. Game 3, 5.9 million views. Game 2 and Game 3 are both all-time lows. So those are the two most least viewed games in NBA Finals history. They're more comparable to like a noon college football game than the NBA Finals game. And people are kind of wondering why, and people are kind of theorizing why. Is it the social justice messages? Is it the time of the year as far as like, the second game was on a Friday, the third game was opposite of the NFL, so those things aren't helping anything. Is it the bubble? Is it no fans, no arenas? And I think it's honestly, as much as a cop-out as this sounds, I think it's a little bit of everything. Okay? I think it's a little bit of everything. I think, yes, I think that there is an issue. Some people do not like just how intense the social justice matters are in the NBA. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, has come out and said that next year, social justice messaging will probably be off of the court. It'll be handled in a different way next year. I'm sure it will be. So that surely has driven away some fans. All right. And that has been an issue. I don't think that's the full issue. I don't think that's the majority of the issue. In my personal opinion, I think the bigger problem is that it doesn't feel real. So the NFL has done a really good job of feeling real. Even the pumped-in noise, even the playing in their own stadium, stuff like that, it's felt really real. The broadcast, everything's felt good. As far as the NBA, it just doesn't. If you watch college basketball, you'll know what I'm talking about. But before college basketball, before the season, there's always a tournament like Hawaii. And it's like it's always the best teams in the nation. So you'll see like number 2 Duke playing number 1 Michigan in Hawaii before this tournament or before the season. And no one really gives a shit about that because everyone kind of inherently understands, 1, these guys are somewhere else, and 2, this game really doesn't matter in the long run. This whole thing really isn't real. It's not really 1 versus 2 here. Now, if Duke plays Michigan 1 versus 2 in the middle of the season, all of a sudden everyone's watching. That's how I kind of feel about the bubble. Is that I know the games count, but just it feels like a practice tournament or it feels like something else. It doesn't feel like the NBA Finals. I think a lot of that has to do with where they're playing. They're playing on the same floor in like a hotel ballroom or whatever the hell it is. There's no fans, and the NFL is doing a really good job of playing at their own stadiums. If you watch the New Orleans Saints and you watch them play in the Superdome, that's all pretty much like what you expect. And you can't even see the fans, you can't see the stands during the game most of the time, like during the actual play. So you're not really missing anything. Now, if the New Orleans Saints were playing on like a practice facility field in the middle of Tampa Bay, Florida, and every single NFL team was playing on this generic field, this training field, I guarantee you it would make the game feel worse. I guarantee you it would make the product feel worse. It would feel less like an NFL game, and it would feel more like an NFL practice. That's what I think is happening with the finals. I really do think a lot of people, and even I think this to an extent, to where it's like this is not a real finals victory. Now, you could argue that this is the hardest final victory. This is the hardest season. These are guys who are forced to play in a hotel or live in a hotel. They can't see their family. They're playing without fans. This is a tough time to be playing basketball. But you could also argue there's no travel. You could also argue there is no fans, so players that struggle in like big moments, it doesn't matter to them. So I see it both ways. But I think regardless, I think the combination of the prolonged social justice push and just how much it's dominated the viewing experience, I do think that's alienated a very small demographic. I think that the bubble has pushed some people away to be like, I really just don't care about this. Like, it's really just not that big of a deal. It's really not that cool. Like, it's not real basketball. It doesn't seem like the same thing. All of that is a perfect storm. I don't think this matters in the long run. I don't think the NBA is struggling. I don't think the NBA will continue to struggle. I don't think this is something that will dominate moving forward. I think it'll all be fine once they move back to kind of normality. But this is certainly something that if it continues next season, you start wondering why. But if it was me, if I was Adam Silver, I'd probably just kind of throw out these numbers, throw out this data, and say that, this is a bit of an anomaly. This is a bit of a weird time. Speaking of a weird time, so let me read you this. So Regal Movie Chain is closing all 536 U.S. theaters on Thursday. This was 2 days ago. So tomorrow. More than 7,000 movie screens will be dark in the U.S. this weekend as the Regal Theater chain. By the way, do you spell theater Theater or R-E? I actually, for some reason, usually spell it Theatre, like the European style. I don't know why, but that's how I always spell it. It said it will shut down all 536 locations on Thursday. The closure reflects an increasingly challenging theatrical landscape due to the COVID-19 pandemic and is temporary, the chain said. So the reason I'm bringing this up is this is interesting, obviously. This is interesting in a few different ways. Another reason I want to bring this up is that I believe it's in Korea or maybe somewhere in Asia. 70% of movie chains are closed or going extinct basically, and they are coming out and saying that it's not because of COVID. They've already come out and said that movie theaters are not a place that COVID can really. It's not like a COVID hotbed. This is all research. I want to say it was Korea, maybe South Korea, but it might have been somewhere else over there. I don't want to misquote, but I also don't want to pause the podcast to go find the article. That's called being lazy. But c'est la vie, and that's called French. So we went down some roads right there. We just took two rights to take a left. Whew! But the point is, and the point in the article was that even though people in Korea or wherever know that movie theaters aren't that big of a deal when it comes to COVID, no one's going back. We know that COVID is blowing up when it comes to bars and restaurants and things like that, but people are going back. You're not seeing this 70% decrease. You're not seeing this like worldwide bankruptcy. You're not seeing this global or nationwide closure of restaurants and bars. You are seeing that with movie theaters, though. And I think that what's happening here is you are seeing a true change in how people act. Not only how people act, but how businesses are acting towards people. I think movie theaters is the first thing that will fall. I think there's a few things that will fall. And because of the pandemic, as far as the pandemic was the step, the pandemic was the first movement that allowed people to kind of explore a different universe and realize that, oh shit, I like this universe more. And so they don't go back. Movie theaters are a big one. I said this when COVID happened. I thought movie theaters were already on their decline because streaming services blew through movies. Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, all of that. There is so much content on there. And you're paying such a cheap price. I mean, think about it. Netflix is like, $15 a month, something like that? One movie at the movie theater with no snacks, no drink, no nothing is like $10 for 2 hours, 3 hours. So it's one of those deals where now you're looking at it and you're like, well, this isn't even close. I mean, this isn't even in the same universe. Not to mention that some of these places, and by some I mean all, like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Disney Plus, etc., they're creating their own movies. So you get exclusive movies, exclusive TV shows, old movies, and old TV shows for a very convenient price at your own home, at the leisure of your own home, with your own snacks, with your own bathroom, all that stuff. All those pros, the movie theater offers no pros. The only thing the movie theater offers is a specific group of big movies, like the Avengers, Marvel, stuff like that. That's out on in theaters. But what happens? What happens if those agencies realize, like, oh, well, wait a minute, we can just sell those movies for $30 per stream or something, just like they did with Mulan. I think Mulan was the first movie that came out and did this, where they said, we'll do a $30 stream, basically pay-per-view for the movie. Now, let me ask you this. That might sound crazy, but let me ask you this. Let's say that the new Jurassic Park movie comes out, and you're a huge Jurassic Park fan, and you can pay, let's say you want to go to the movies by yourself, which not a lot of people do. I do, or I used to do all the time, but not a lot of people do. Let's say you like to go to the movies by yourself, and you're going just by yourself, and you're going to go see Jurassic Park. You're going to go get a large-ass bag of popcorn and a big old icy, and you're going to go watch it. So you've got to get dressed. You've got to drive to the theater. You've got to buy your tickets for $10 to $12. You've got to find a seat, and it's going to be packed. It's a movie premiere. So you got to find a seat. You're sitting next to total strangers. You're not in your own seat. You're in this big public area. You got to buy snacks. So now you're talking about $5, $6 popcorn, $4, $5, $6 drink. All of a sudden, now you're spending upwards of $30 to do this. If Jurassic Park or whoever offered you the opportunity to stream it at your own home for a similar price, who wouldn't take that, right? Who wouldn't do that? Especially if you start thinking about what people will do, and they'll start saying, they'll invite 4 of their friends and say, hey guys, everyone chip in $5, and I'm going to get the new Jurassic Park, and we can do like a premiere at my house. Everyone bring snacks, everyone do this. All of a sudden, your home is a movie theater. All of a sudden, you're getting all of the benefits of a movie theater with just your friends for a cheaper price in the movie theater. I don't think movie theaters stand a chance. I really don't. I think this is one of those things that we'll see get phased out in this generation that was an absolute mainstay moving forward. I mean, when I was growing up, movie theaters was a place that you went to all the time. You went to movies whenever you were with your grandparents or something. They didn't know what to do with you. You went to movies on first dates. You went to movies with your friends on midnight premieres. Sometimes you would just go hang out in the movie theater. I remember, this is a long time ago, but me and my friends went and saw the movie 23 and the Zodiac back-to-back in a movie theater. We were at the movie theater for like 7 hours. And that's because we were like 15 years old. We have nothing better to do than go buy some snacks and sit in a movie theater. Now, there's a million better things to do. So this is one of those things where I'm certainly not surprised at all to see, but this is a change of the guard with how our culture is changing. And it made me think about some other ways that our culture may be changing. I think other places like GameStop's a good example. I think those places, those stores will be phased out. I think maybe stores in general will kind of be phased out. There'll be very specific stores, but some places it's like, why do I need this place to exist? You know, I mean, even if you go through a mall, there's so many places in a mall where it's like, man, it's just so much easier to shop online. And I think we all see that happening, but gyms are another big one. Gyms, I think, are real on thin ice right now. A gym just closed down by my house, and you know, I have been a member of a gym, sometimes a member of 2 gyms, can't hide money, since I was 17 years old. I remember I was 17 at my first job, and I started working out, and I begged my dad to go get me a gym membership at what was World Gym. World Gym doesn't even exist anymore, but what was a World Gym, and I wanted a membership so bad, and we ended up getting one. I would go there every day for 2-3 hours a day. That's how, when you're younger, you work out a really long time. But ever since then, I've been going to a gym for my entire life. You're talking about 13, 14 years of a gym, and right now I don't have one, and I haven't had one since the coronavirus started. So the last time I went to a gym was in March, and I've been doing things like yoga. I mean, y'all know I swam. I was swimming for a while before it got cold. Running, yoga, at-home stuff. I mean, just periodically you start to buy things like kettlebells or a dumbbell or even a bar, the bare minimum, basically. And I know a lot of friends of mine who were in the same boat where they were big gym goers. And they started to say, you know what, I'm not going to a gym anymore, so I'm going to invest $200, $300 into a bench or a squat rack or something. I'm going to have it here. And again, once you make that initial purchase, the convenience, every aspect of it just outweighs going to a gym. And it's crazy to see these parts of life just slowly get eliminated, where you're seeing these things just become obsolete, and they're becoming obsolete so fast. They're becoming obsolete at a rapid rate. And it's some of it's good. I think some of it is good. I think the pandemic, the quarantine, however you want to phrase it, it is forcing humans to interact in a completely different manner. It's forcing humans to exist in a completely different manner. And it's almost forcing like a generational cultural shift in a really, really fast manner. I don't think any of this stuff would have happened if, if this pandemic, if this thing didn't hit. And that's an obvious statement, but that means that how many years off were we from no movie theaters? How many years off were we from no gyms? How many years off were we from all of this just going away? I mean, I talked about this before on the podcast, but like I don't know anyone who's gone to church in the past 7 months. Not one person. And not to get all, religious on you here, but I'm someone who would go to church probably twice a month, 3 times a month, sometimes every week. My parents certainly would go every week. My grandparents, same deal. That whole generation. And for the last 7 months, I don't know a single person who has gone. Not one. And that's another thing where I think people will go back, but will the same amount of people go back? I don't know. I mean, I think gyms will stick around, but I think like they won't go the route of movie theaters. I think gyms will just shrinken where they'll get smaller. These like big Planet Fitness looking things, or like these huge buildings with hundreds and thousands of members. I don't think that's going to be a thing anymore. I think people are just too used to the other side now. They're way too used to it. So it's an interesting thing. And I think it's something that we should all be well aware of, is just this generational kind of cultural shift. And I'm sure you feel it. I'm sure you are doing things that you feel yourself doing so differently, or just behaving differently, or how you view things differently. And I certainly am. Another way that I noticed that I'm doing things differently is like the time that I spend in my house or home or something like that. And this is going to sound opposite of my whole Gilmore Girls thing, but back in the day when everything was so hustle and bustle, whenever you got a chance to spend like 4 or 5 hours at home, just like vegging out, whether it was a video game or a movie or a TV show or whatever, you would take it. Now it's almost like everyone has been home for so long and everyone has been away. There is no hustle and bustle. Like there is zero hustle and there is even less bustle. So I think people now are hesitant to just sit in one space. They're hesitant to just veg out on the couch or veg out on a video game or whatever, because if there is any other option, they're going to go do it. If there's any other way to do something or to get out or to move around or to, like there's sometimes I just go for a drive. Roll my windows down and just roll down the beach or whatever, or just be outside. I'll just go stand or sit outside. I've been going on walks, Like I'll just go, when I'm running, I'll go run like 2-3 miles and then I'll walk like a mile just to be outside, just to do something. So it's just, my point is that this is like, even though I think the coronavirus, and this is going to be a weird statement. I haven't even vocalized this to anybody, so I'm not sure how this is going to sound. I think the coronavirus was and is a huge problem, and it's something that we should be taking stock in, something we should be aware of, But I think now that we're this deep into it, I also think we need to be aware of the changes of us, the changes of humanity, the changes of how we operate. We aren't built to do this. Human beings are not built to do this super independent lifestyle, this hermit lifestyle. Humans are built for social interaction. Humans are built for being around people. They're built for emotional connections and things like that, conversation. And they're not really built for not. They're not really built for living in a cave by yourself and that's it. When's the last time, think about this. When is the last time you talk to a stranger? And when is and not for work, because if it's for work or something, then whatever, that's not really the same. But when's the last time you can't really talk to a stranger? And when you think about when would I have done that? Well, all the time, right? Like back in the day, you could talk to a stranger all the time. You talk to a stranger at a bar, you can meet new people. You could go out with a friend and they have a mutual friend who you don't know. You talk to them. There's a birthday party, a Christmas party. There's so many times where you're just around people you don't know and you're just in a social setting. That ain't a thing. Like, I have not been in that setting for 7 months of just like a bar or this like social atmosphere. I've been around people. I've been around my family. I've been around the same people. I mean, I've been around probably the same 20 people, 25 people for 7 months. And when all of that shrinks, your whole world shrinks, and all of your whatever's inside of us as humans, that social aspect kind of goes away too. So it is a really tough time. And like I said on the beginning of the podcast, this week, last couple weeks has been where the warm wave of disillusion has certainly reared its ugly head, for certain. And it's not surprising because of what we're going through as a people. Now, for the main event, we're going to talk politics here. We're going to talk politics, and so, man, this is going to be one of those topics. This is going to be one of those rants. So we're less than a month away from the election, and Donald Trump, a couple days ago, came down with COVID-19. You may have heard about the virus. He came down with COVID. Now, I have been, if anything, critical of Donald Trump his entire presidency. I have been so critical that I've been called a bleeding heart liberal by my own friends and family, even though I voted Republican in every presidential election. And I'm going to be critical of him again. I think the way Donald Trump has handled him having COVID over the last 3 days, is the worst thing I've ever seen him do. And is the worst moment of his presidency and campaign. I am not surprised at all to have heard people tell me or ask me or talk to me about the idea of, how could you possibly vote for this guy? Who is this guy? I've heard Republicans say, I don't know if I can vote for him. I don't know if I can vote for him. And that's a real testament to how terrible Donald Trump has done in this last week, or even in this campaign against Joe Biden. The algorithm for how the Democratic side is handling this is super obvious. They're stepping back. They're not answering any questions. They're shutting their eyes, closing their mouth. They're just standing there and letting Trump self-destruct. Trump is used to the playbook being, I'm going to bully the candidate, because the candidate was Hillary Clinton. I'm going to bully the candidate. People are going to love that. People are going to love my bravado, this unabashed, kind of confidence, and go America go, and all sort of stuff. And the Democrats are saying, well, the only way we lose is if Trump puts the spotlight on us. If Trump puts the spotlight on Joe Biden being 78, on Joe Biden probably not being capable of being president, barely being capable to talk for any amount of time. They're not putting the spotlight on Kamala Harris and her radical policies, not putting the spotlight on Kamala Harris and what she has said about Joe Biden about, 3 months ago. So the only way they lose is if Trump does that, if Trump hammers them with that. And they've said, we're not going to let him do that, because we know that all he wants to do is put the spotlight on himself. So if he does that until November, we're going to win. And I'll tell you this right now. If the election was tomorrow, and if I was a betting man, and we know I am, I would bet that Joe Biden wins. I right now, I would say that I'm pretty confident that Joe Biden would win if the election was tomorrow. Joe Biden right now has a bigger lead in the polls or the numbers or whatever you want to believe. He has a bigger lead right now than Hillary Clinton ever did. Joe Biden's multiple points, and we're talking about a much bigger lead than Hillary Clinton. So, yes, I understand that the polls were wrong once. I understand that the polls are not an end-all, be-all. But this is real bad. This is real bad. And it's getting worse. It's not getting better, because Biden and Harris are just kind of digging their heels in. And they know exactly what's happening. And Trump could not have made a worse display of that than during this whole COVID thing. So he gets COVID. Here's a timeline. Now, again, guys, look. we're not going to talk policy here. I'm not going to break down every Senate race. I'm not going to break down, the key states. I'm not going to break down battleground states and stuff like that. If you want that, if you are here for that, please finish this podcast and then mosey on over to the Ben Shapiro's of the world and the Rush Limbaughs of the world and whoever else of the world. That ain't me, okay? That ain't me. If you want to talk about the post office and the postal code, go, please. Look, I cannot be asked to care about the post office, okay? The day I start doing podcasts talking about the post office, it'll probably be about the end. That'll probably be the time where it's time for me to pack up and move on. That'll be as bad as it gets. But I will tell you about how I'm perceiving this and how I'm seeing all this and how it makes me feel as a voter and how I think it makes other voters feel. And I'll try and speak both sides of this. So I've been as you all know, I voted for Donald Trump. And as you all know, I've said I would vote for Donald Trump again if I had to go back and do it over again because my issues were, border policy and immigration and things he's been strong on. Right now, I am having the hardest time I've ever had in my entire last 4 years being like, yep, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. I think what he has done in the last 3 or 4 days has been downright embarrassing, and I'm not totally sure how anybody can still be buying into this Hulk Hogan fake-ass machismo stuff. It's blowing my mind when I still hear people who treat Donald Trump like some kind of god and who are still impressed with his gunslinger mentality and like the tweets and all that stuff. Like, I shouldn't be surprised because that's how some people have made an absolute living in talk radio, but it's just so sad at this point that people are just still like that. Like, I think most tried and true MAGA members that I know are really easing off of the MAGA. They're really those red hats are getting put into a lot of attics, if you know what I mean. Those red hats are being put in some boxes and stowed away. And I think a lot of people are really cooling off on that, and people are more along the lines of, okay, let's just vote for the party in spite of the president. And that's where I'm at. I am at, let's vote for these policies versus this person. 4 years of these policies versus the radical left policies is better than the alternative. Even if it means we have to deal with 4 years of some, tweet-happy cartoon character. We can figure it out 4 years from now. And that's what I want to tell you all. Now, look, I'm not swaying you which way to vote. I don't really give a shit which way you do vote. Doesn't matter to me at all. I'm not going to shy away from what I do because this isn't a political podcast. And this isn't a podcast that's built on, we don't have a requirement. We don't have a requirement that you're Republican. We don't have a requirement that you're Democratic. We don't have a requirement that you're white or black or straight or gay. It doesn't matter to me. I hope you're all, not in one person. It'd be impossible to be all of those things unless you're like some kind of three-headed beast from the underworld. But I hope we have a reflection of all of those. I really do. I love hearing from different people. I love hearing from different ideas. I don't want a 100% right or 100% left listener base. And I know I don't have them. Or I know I don't have that because I get shit on in my own comments on YouTube more than any YouTuber on earth. All right? 90% of the comments are most of the times people disagreeing with me or calling me a simp. It happens. But I'm not Clay Travis. I'm not Ben Shapiro. I'm not placating to one group. I know this is probably going to get a lot of dislikes. I know this is probably going to get a lot of bad comments. Whatever, I don't care. It's not a big deal. Honestly could care less. And there's not a lot of people putting out content who believe in that. People probably already disliked and clicked off of this by the time that I said I don't like Donald Trump. All right? That's enough for them. But I'm just going to tell you how it is. All right? So don't think that this is one way or the other. But I do think it's really important for both parties, however you're voting, to think about who you are voting for. And I don't mean the person. I mean the policies. Okay? If you didn't like Obama's America, if you didn't like that progressive, radical kind of regime, you are not going to like what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are doing. Kamala Harris is probably more radical. This group is probably more radical. Things like the Green New Deal, things like socialized health care, those are all the things like abortion. Just all of those are really important topics. So do not sell yourself short. It's like a Sally went to the seashore to collect seashells. Do not sell yourself short and just say, well, Trump sucks. Well, Trump's a racist. Well, Trump is an egomaniac. Well, Trump's a tyrant. And then move on and say, I'm voting for whoever else. Just like, don't look at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and say, well, I'm not voting for Democrats, and then you're going to Trump. You really need to go see where you fit in. You really need to go see where you are at on topics like abortion, like immigration, like Iran, like gun control. You need to go. Climate change, all of those things, healthcare, college, student debt, whatever. You need to go search out those topics and figure out where you are at on those topics and where those policies end up. This is a really important election, and I don't think we can get away with a campaign like we have right now where one side is refusing to answer questions and one side is making this whole thing like a real-life SNL skit. That's not fair to us. So what do we have to do? We have to go and make our decisions for ourselves. You sure as hell aren't getting them from listening to a debate. You sure as hell aren't getting it from CNN. You sure as hell aren't getting it from Chris Wallace. So you got to go do it. I am advocating for you to go and search out these answers. If you think Trump's a racist, go see if he's a racist. If you think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are cool, go see if they really are that cool. Because if you're a small business owner, they might not be that cool. Okay? Or if you're an unborn fetus, they might not be that cool. So you need to go figure it out for yourself. That's as far as I'm going to say on that. So let's talk about Trump on COVID. Well, actually, I'm going to take a step back. So Mike Pence and Kamala Harris are debating tonight. Honestly, this is a hot take. This is controversial yet brave. I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm the first person that would say this. And maybe the only person that has said this. I think Pence right now would be a better candidate than Trump. I think Pence would have a better chance of winning this election, and I think people would vote for him more than Donald Trump right now. If we were in a Republican primary, I think Pence would beat out Trump. Because Trump's superpower of this like bravado that worked so well against the Clintons, there's no one to work it on now. It's actually kind of a detractor because Trump is so far away from policy and so far away from actual things that matter, and he's just saying the same old stuff over and over again and sounds more and more like Hulk Hogan in Saturday morning cartoons than a real life human being, that I think someone like Pence, who is more of a politician, who is more of, yeah, I might be a boring kind of guy, but here's the issues. A ticket like Pence Cruz or something like that versus Trump Pence, I think the Pence Cruz ticket would destroy the Trump ticket. So the reason I say that is that this vice presidential debate is going to be interesting to see how Pence can do, because Pence is probably a better illustrator, a better narrator of Trump's policies than Trump is, because Pence doesn't get caught up in all the bullshit that Trump does. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what's going to happen. This is being recorded about 5 hours before the debate. What's going to happen is Pence is going to be accused of being a misogynist. He's going to be, sexist. Kamala Harris is going to dodge any answers. There's no reason for her to answer anything. Not to mention she can't answer anything. Kamala Harris is flip-flopped on every issue. Go ahead and Google search her thoughts on social health care. Go ahead and look at her thoughts on the Green New Deal. You'll be confused because she has supported and been anti both issues in the last calendar year. So Kamala Harris isn't going to answer anything. She's just going to sit there, get through this debate, and then once she gets through this, they can go back to sitting on their back foot and not doing anything and letting Trump destroy his campaign. So I just want to get that hot take out there. Now let's talk about the COVID thing. So Trump gets COVID, right? this would have been a really good time for him to kind of, rally behind people who have had the virus, people who have lost people to the virus, start to connect with them. So it would be a good time for him to kind of bunker down. Instead, the White House gift shop started selling coins, talking about Donald Trump defeated COVID. He rode around in a cavalcade, waving to his loyalties of fans. He put out a commercial where he's ripping his mask off and he's defeated COVID. COVID is basically like this dragon or something, and he has slayed the dragon. We are closer to Donald Trump died for our sins, Donald Trump lived so that we could destroy COVID, than we are to like actual reality. The stuff that he is saying, the stuff that he's putting out, these interviews, these tweets, the tweet, I had it pulled up and I accidentally deleted it, but the tweet he had about COVID, the tweet he had about, I'm not going to be able to find it, but the tweet he had that was like, don't let COVID do this, don't let COVID dominate your life. I had it, I beat it, ain't no thing. I feel better than I did in 20 years. Great drugs, great hospital, great doctors, really kind of the best doctors, all that stuff. That tweet alone was like, hey, Don, remember all that stuff I said about you needing to like rally behind people who have had the virus? You are just shitting all over their chest for no reason. I mean, imagine if you lost your parent in COVID and you see that tweet and you're just like, what the hell, man? Like, he is making this so much about him and so much about him beating the virus and all this other stuff that it's just really left a bad taste in my mouth. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I like the guy. I'm not going to sit here and say that I respect the guy. I'm not going to sit here and say that, I think he's cool or any of that stuff. Far from it. I'm pretty comfortable saying like I'm off the Donald Trump thing. I'm off of that. I'm done, like with Trump. But like I said, I have to look at what the policies are going to be for the next 4 years. And mine align more with those policies of the Republican Party than what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are pushing. So in spite of Donald Trump, I plan on voting for him in this election, and I know that's going to rub people the wrong way, but I'm also full of transparency here. It is what it is. So, but I certainly would not tell anyone that like he is 100% the right move. He is 100% this. He is the commander in chief. Hopefully this is an experiment that is over. This idea that these like cartoonish characters, maybe he was a necessary evil for the Hillary Clinton stuff, I don't know. But I think this experiment of these loud, cartoonish, bullish characters who are less policy and more cartoon, hopefully this is over. I really think if literally anyone was on the Democratic side, I think they'd run away with this election. And hopefully that's the case as far as the future. I talked about before on here that I thought that we were staring at a future full of The Rock's, Kanye West's, whoever won People's Sexiest Man of the Year basically got the nomination, And I think people are now rebuking that idea and saying like, holy shit, we can't do another 4 years of this. We can't do more of these tweets. We can't do more of these weird like, I don't think Donald Trump is Mussolini. I don't think Donald Trump is like a tyrant, dictator, maniac, but I do think he's egotistical. I do think he's a narcissist, and those are kind of conflicting. Like I can definitely see where people would see what he's doing and be like, holy shit, dude, are we living in North Korea? Like I can see where people would make the jump. Now, obviously, you got to come back to earth and be like, okay, well, even though it looks like we have a leader that the Simpsons are making fun of or something, what's actually happening in America is not comparable, or some would say comparable, to North Korea, not comparable or comparable to Mussolini, to China, to Russia, and that stuff. So let's not let hyperbole, or as my good friend Ryan would say, let's not let hyperbole get in the way of this. Trump is a cartoon character. Trump is full of himself. Trump is forcing himself in the spotlight to the detriment of his own campaign. But I don't think that he is erecting, bronze statue of himself in place of the Statue of Liberty and is going to start ethnic cleansing. Like I don't think it's one and the same. I think you can sit here and say, hey, man, Trump has done a really shitty job with the whole COVID thing, man. Yeah, I think you can for sure say that without then saying, hey, man, Trump has done a really shitty job with this whole COVID thing. I think he's going to enslave us. There's a jump. There's a big jump. I was just having this conversation with a young lady who she was talking about abolishing prisons and the police. Shows you how great online dating has been nowadays, right? But she was talking about how there are bad cops. Agreed. There are bad cops. But there is a huge jump from there are bad cops to abolish police. It's like, whoa, hold on a second. I agree with you the first step, but there's a that you just took a big jump there. The same thing with Trump, where I think that before, it was like I love Trump or I hate Trump, and now it's like you can love Trump, you can not like Trump, you can dislike Trump, you can really dislike Trump, you can hate Trump. There's not these huge jumps of I'm either in love with him and voting for him, or I hate him because I think he is the an incarnate of Adolf Hitler. Big difference there. Big difference. So I just want people to step back, think about what's going on here, really think about if you don't vote for Donald Trump, if you don't vote for the Republican Party, what are you voting for? And the reason I say that is because they won't tell you. The Democratic side is not telling you right now. They're not letting you know. So you have to go do the research. I'll give Trump this. I'll give Pence this. I'll give the Republicans this. If you're voting for the Republican Party, you know what you're voting for. You're voting for what we just had for the last 4 years. That's it. I'm phrasing the question that way as far as if you're not voting for the Republican Party, what are you voting for? Because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they really haven't told us anything. Joe Biden has declined to answer if he's going to fill, if he's going to pack the Senate or whatever. He's not answering anything about the Green New Deal. He's not answering anything about abolishing the police. These are all things where it's like, I really need to know that if I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I really need to know what the other side is. Is the other side the Green New Deal? Is it abolishing police? What is it? What actually are we doing? Or what's going to happen with Iran? What's going to happen in Tehran? Like, what are we actually doing? No one seems to know. So before you vote, please go figure it out for yourself. And that's what I'll say about that. We are right around the hour mark. I could go back and forth on this Trump thing. It's just, I'm disappointed in him. Just kind of as a person, just kind of like his demeanor, just how he's acted through this whole thing. I'm disappointed in the few MAGA people who are left. God, I mean, I just don't know I don't know how you could be a MAGA person right now. I really don't. I mean, I understand how you could vote for Trump. I mean, I'm probably going to be voting for Trump, but I can't understand how you're wearing a red "Make America Great Again" hat unironically, and you think he's the man. It's like, I don't know. I think there's some real daddy issues going around with a lot of the MAGA guys who a lot of those fellas who think Trump is their god. I think they might need to go find them a hobby. Maybe they need to go become car guys. But I think it's more daddy issues than not. So, thank you for listening, guys. This podcast, a full-on podcast. I appreciate that very much for you listening, all the support. Again, guys, look, if you have not rated the show, go rate the show. We right now have, I think, 16 ratings. All 16 are 5-star ratings. That's a 100% 5-star ratings. Bottom line is, if people listen to this show, they give it a 5-star rating because this is the best show out there. That we do what no one else can do. I mean, we're closer. We don't have any loyalties as far as like we don't have to do anything. We don't have to placate to any demographic. We don't have to say certain things. We just say what's on our mind. If it changes, it changes. If we're hurting people's feelings, we're hurting people's feelings. And that's just how it is, man. That's just how it is. And who else can do this with no producer? Who else can do this with no script? Who else can do this with no breaks? Not even a sip of water. I got my gallon jug of water right here. I haven't taken a sip out of it because I don't want to waste a breath. I don't want to waste a second of your time because I know your time is valuable, and I know we're putting a lot of content out, and if you are ingesting all of the content, my God, you are a hero. I might vote for you. I might vote for you for president, because if you make these kind of decisions, you could probably run the country. Thank you guys for listening. I do appreciate it. Rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen. We usually go out to a different song, but we're going to go out to Van Halen again here. Thank you very much for listening. You are listening to the James Skrmetta Show podcast. Write me in your ballot if you want to. Skrmetta 2020.